On October 4th, 1957, the Soviet Union successfully launched the world's first satellite, the Sputnik 1. The Sputnik 1 marked the beginning of the space race between the United States and the Soviet Union. Russia took the lead in the space race when they launched this 22-inch metal sphere, the Sputnik 1. The Sputnik 1 was designed to collect data on the upper layers of the Earth's atmosphere. It was made up of 3 different parts. The first was a booster rocket that launched it enough to get through the atmosphere. The second part took over at 5,000 miles an hour and brought it to 500 miles from the surface of Earth. The final part of the Sputnik 1 was the satellite itself. This artificial moon landed back on the Earth on December 18, 1957.
You are hearing the actual signals transmitted by the Earth-circling satellite, one of the great scientific feats of the age.
This was bad news for America. If Russia could send satellites into space, then maybe they could launch nuclear missiles as well.
The United States was prepared for the Soviet Union dropping bombs on us from a satellite.
We should find out what they're doing that we're not doing.
The race run by rockets, where is the finish line?
On November 3rd, 1957, less than a month later, the Soviet Union launched the Sputnik 2. It carried the first passenger into space, Laika the space dog. This proved that a living thing could survive spaceflight. On December 6, 1957, the U.S. had a huge setback. Their first launch of the Vanguard lifted 6 inches off the pad and fell back down with a vibrant explosion. On January 31, 1958, the U.S. was still scrambling to catch up to the Soviet Union in the space race. They launched the Explorer 1, which discovered the Van Allen radiation belt. A few months later, on July 29, 1958, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, also known as NASA, was formed. On April 12, 1961, the Soviets pulled even further ahead when cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin orbited Earth in the spaceship Vostok 1 to become the first human space traveler in orbit around the Earth. On May 5, 1961, U.S. astronaut Alan B. Shepard reached suborbital altitude and parachuted back to Earth. He became the first U.S. astronaut in space. On February 20, 1962, almost a year later, John H. Glenn successfully orbited the Earth 3 times aboard the Friendship 7 spacecraft. He became the first U.S. astronaut to orbit the Earth. Science, technology, engineering, and math, or STEM education, became a major part of school during this time. The U.S. needed to educate more STEM researchers so they could pass Russia in the race. Meanwhile, Russia had many other firsts, such as the first dual-man flight, the first 3-man flight, the first woman in space, and the first spacewalk. With the Soviet Union rapidly advancing, it was clear that the United States needed to apply more resources to overtake their rivals.
The program that that President Eisenhower has put forward is a losing program. The United States will always be behind in space. We need money for a larger rocket, and we need a post-Mercury human spaceflight program. Kennedy said, well, I'm not sure I want to make up my mind so quickly, and said, we'll think about this, but we're not going to address those decisions until the next budget cycle in the fall of 1961.
As the race progressed, announcements of a challenging mission began. On May 25, 1961, President John F. Kennedy challenged the Soviet Union to a moon race.
I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before this decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth. No single space project in this period will be more impressive to mankind or more important for the long-range exploration of space, and none will be so difficult or expensive to accomplish. We propose to accelerate the development of the appropriate lunar spacecraft.
There were varied reactions about Kennedy's proposal.
I don't think that it is important whether it is good or not, but man, we can do it, and for that reason we will do it.
At best, it's premature to decide whether or not we want to send a man to the moon. I think science particularly astronomy, can advance a great deal by sending instrumented capsule.
The scientific data that we can get by a man going to the moon, we can't really predict.
I think this will be very good and helpful for all the studies, for not only for astronomy, but also for geophysics.
We hear so much about the race to the moon these days. Do you think this
race of what?
The race to the moon, to get to the moon.
Oh, yes.
Do you think this is a good idea?
No.
It might prove to a fossil hunting ground for early life and early developments on the Earth. Under the large layer of meteoritic material, we might find the answer to how things started on this Earth from our study of the moon.
On July 13, 1969, the Soviet Union launched an unmanned Soviet craft, Luna 15, in hope to land on the lunar surface, collect rock samples, and return to Earth. On July 21st, the Luna 15 crash-landed on the moon. On July 20th, 1969, the U.S. Apollo 11 reached the lunar surface.
12, 11, 10, 9, ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. We have a liftoff. Liftoff on Apollo 11. Shadow. 4 forward, drift into the right a little. 30 seconds forward, drift.
Armstrong is on the moon. Neil Armstrong, 38-year-old American, standing on the surface of the moon. On this July 20th, 1969.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
This is one of the most famous quotes in history, and it represents the legacy of walking on the moon. Although the Soviet Union was in the lead for most of the space race, in the end, the United States pulled through and won. The space race has been over for decades, but its legacy, strong funding for the STEM education and for students to excel in the fields of science, math, and technology, continues on today. The task of building the International Space Station, the demise of communism, and NASA's decision to retire its fleet of space shuttles ended the rivalry.